The ground shook under my boots before I even heard the sound, and my first thought was that the old trestle bridge was finally giving way with me still standing on it. I grabbed the rusted rail beside me and looked down into the ravine, my heart slamming against my ribs. Dust rose from the cracked stones below. Somewhere under that dust was a secret that had been buried for 11 years. And somewhere behind me, a small creature was screaming in a way I had never heard her scream before. My name is Daniel Cross, and 6 months ago I was sent to HFY as part of the Reclamation Corps, a team tasked with mapping old alien infrastructure left behind by the Chorath, a species that abandoned this sector before humans ever arrived. Most of my work involved walking dead train lines with a scanner, tagging broken machinery, and reporting back numbers nobody outside a records office would ever read. It was quiet work, safe work. At least, that is what I believed until the day everything changed at Junction 7 station. I found her there on an ordinary afternoon, curled beside a collapsed ticket booth, her scales the color of wet stone and her wings folded tight against a body no bigger than a small dog. She did not run from me the way every other creature on this planet did. She simply watched, her amber eyes locked on mine, as if she had been waiting for someone, anyone, to finally arrive. I called her Ember. I brought her food. I sat with her during my lunch breaks and told her things I had not told another living soul, because out here, 12 light years from home, a person gets lonely in ways that are hard to explain. But Ember never looked at me for long. Her gaze always drifted past my shoulder, down the broken rail line, toward a shallow ravine half a kilometer away. Every single day, without fail, she stared down that track, like she was expecting a train that would never come. It took me 3 weeks to finally follow her gaze all the way to its source. What I found in that ravine was a crushed transport pod, half buried under stone and dust, hidden from every survey flight for over a decade. Inside were the remains of a Chorath family, and curled protectively around the smallest of them was the skeleton of an adult glider, the same species as Ember, dead for 11 years, guarding a family that time had already taken. Ember was not the creature in that wreck. She was too young. She had been born after the crash, alone on a mountainside, with only her mother's scent trail leading her to the last place her family had ever been. She had spent her entire short life waiting at a dead station for someone who was never coming back. I filed transfer papers that same week. My commanding officer, a sharp-eyed woman named Laura Bennett, looked at me like I had lost my mind, but she signed the papers anyway. Ember came to live in my quarters, and for 2 months, life on HFY became almost peaceful. Almost. Then came the tremor under the trestle bridge, and the scream that did not sound like anything I had heard from her before. I turned and ran back toward the platform, my boots pounding against broken concrete, my scanner bouncing hard against my chest. Ember was not curled by the ticket booth where I left her. She was standing at the very edge of the ravine, wings half spread, her small body rigid with fear, staring down into a hole that had not been there that morning. The ground had opened, not from age, not from weather, but from something moving underneath it. I dropped to my knees at the edge and shone my light down into the dark. Something large shifted beneath the collapsed trestle, metal groaning under its weight. My scanner screamed a warning I had never heard it give before. A deep vibration signature buried far below the ravine floor, active, powered, and very much alive. The Chorath had abandoned this line 11 years ago in a hurry. Nobody at Reclamation Corps had ever explained why the shutdown happened so fast, only that all activity in this sector stopped overnight, and every worker was pulled out within 72 hours. I had assumed it was budget cuts or politics or some boring bureaucratic decision made by people I would never meet. I was wrong. The metal groaned again, louder this time, and a section of the ravine wall crumbled away, revealing a sealed hatch built directly into the stone. It was Chorath design, old and corroded, but the small light beside its handle blinked a slow, steady green. Powered. After 11 years, still powered. Ember screamed again and grabbed the hem of my jacket in her teeth, pulling backward with surprising strength for a creature her size. She was trying to drag me away from the hatch, away from the ravine, away from whatever sat sleeping beneath this forgotten station for over a decade. I should have listened to her. I did not. I keyed my comm unit and called it in, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. Bennett answered within seconds, and I explained what I was seeing, the hatch, the green light, the vibration reading climbing steadily on my scanner. There was a long pause on the other end, longer than any pause should last during an active field report. Then Bennett said something that turned my blood cold. She told me to step away from the hatch immediately, that Reclamation Corps had never cleared this sector for excavation. because the original Chorath evacuation logs listed the area as containing an unstable containment unit, and that no records existed explaining what exactly was being contained. I asked her what that meant. She told me it meant get out now. I grabbed Ember and started backing away from the ravine, my boots sliding on loose gravel, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Behind me, the hatch let out a hiss, a long mechanical exhale, like something drawing its first breath in 11 years. I did not turn around. I ran. The trestle bridge groaned under my weight as I crossed it, boards splintering beneath my boots, and for one terrifying second I thought the whole structure would give way and drop me straight into whatever was waking up below. Ember clung to my shoulder, her small claws digging through my jacket, her wings beating uselessly against the wind as if she wanted to fly us both to safety and knew she was still too young to manage it. I made it across just as the middle section of the bridge collapsed behind me, crashing down into the ravine in a cloud of dust and rust. The impact must have jarred something loose inside that hatch, because a low mechanical roar rolled up out of the ground, shaking loose stones from the ravine walls and sending birds scattering from every tree within a mile. I did not stop running until I reached the main road, where a transport vehicle was already speeding toward me, kicking up dust of its own. Bennett was behind the wheel, and beside her sat a man named Oliver Grant, the closest thing our outpost had to a Chorath technology specialist. He looked pale, and he was holding a datapad with shaking hands. They pulled me and Ember into the vehicle, and Bennett hit the accelerator before the door even finished closing. As we sped away from Junction 7, Oliver read from his datapad in a voice that kept cracking with nerves. The Chorath evacuation, he explained, had not been about budget or politics at all. 11 years ago, a containment failure at a nearby research site had released something into the ravine that the Chorath could not safely destroy, so instead they sealed it, shut down the entire rail line to keep people away, and left before anyone asked too many questions. Nobody at Reclamation Corps had known. The records had been wiped, or hidden, or simply lost in the chaos of a rushed evacuation. My scanner readings from that morning were the first proof in over a decade that whatever sat inside that hatch was still active, and worse, still growing stronger. We drove straight through the night toward the main outpost, calling in every available unit along the way. By the time the sun rose over Kessa 4, 3 full response teams had been mobilized, and a containment perimeter was already being drawn around Junction 7 station. I stood at the edge of that perimeter with Ember curled against my chest, watching engineers in heavy suits approach the ravine with equipment I did not recognize. It took them 6 hours to seal the hatch permanently, welding layers of reinforced plating over the old Chorath design, until the vibration signature on every scanner dropped back down to nothing. 6 hours during which nobody spoke above a whisper, and every single person on that perimeter kept glancing nervously toward the ravine, waiting for the ground to open again. It never did. Whatever had been stirring beneath that forgotten station went silent, sealed away for what the engineers promised would be good this time, permanently, with proper records filed and proper warnings posted so nobody would ever stumble into that ravine by accident again. Bennett found me sitting on the hood of a transport vehicle that evening, Ember asleep in my lap, exhausted from a day that had aged us both by what felt like years. She did not say much. She just handed me a cup of hot coffee and sat beside me, watching the sun go down over the ruined station in silence. I asked her the question that had been eating at me since the hatch first hissed open. I asked her if Ember had known. If some instinct buried deep in that small body had understood, all along, exactly what was sleeping beneath the ravine, and if that was the real reason she had spent 11 years staring down that track instead of simply mourning her lost family. Bennett did not have an answer. Nobody did. But when I looked down at Ember, curled tight and finally at peace in my lap, I thought about how she had tried to pull me away from that hatch with everything her small body had, how she had known danger before any scanner did, and how she had waited at that station for over a decade, watching, guarding, protecting a secret she could never explain to anyone. Maybe she was not waiting for her family to come home after all. Maybe some part of her had been standing guard the entire time, keeping watch over a threat only she could sense, in a place everyone else had long since forgotten. I do not know if that is true. I will probably never know for certain. But from that day forward, whenever Ember tenses beside me, whenever her ears go flat and her tail goes still, I listen. I have learned the hard way that some warnings do not come from a scanner, and some guardians do not speak a single word. Kessa 4 is quieter now, the ravine sealed, the station finally abandoned for good this time, with nothing left to watch over. But Ember still sits by the window most evenings, staring out toward the old rail line, and I have stopped wondering why. Some instincts never fully fade, even after the danger is gone, and I have decided that is not something to fix. It is something to respect.